Hello and welcome back to another build video. Thanks everyone for the support, and don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button if you enjoy the content, and let's go. Today we are showing a Frost gun build, and we are using Brr-Zerker and Stabbomancer as the two classes. We are using From the Shadows action skill, and this makes us enter stealth and we turn invincible. So when we are in this action skill, all the damage we do is automatically gonna critical hit, but the critical hit damage is reduced by 25%. And then the duration of this action skill is 8 seconds, but we're gonna be able to keep this up for way longer than 8 seconds, and I'm gonna get into why very soon. For the Stabbomancer skill tree, we start off with the class feat, which increases our critical hit chance by 30%, so this is gonna be very useful when we are not in the action skill From the Shadows. We haven't spent too much skill points in the Stabbomancer tree, but we want to max out 3 skills, and the first one here is Arsenal. So this is increase our melee damage, spell damage and gun damage by 15%. Then we want to max out potent potions, and this is to help our status effect damage a little bit. So we get 20% increased damage, and we get 40% increased duration of our status effects. And then we want to max out exploit their weakness. So this is whenever the Fate Maker applies a status effect to an enemy, the affected enemy takes increased damage from all sources for a duration. And for the BrrZerker skill tree, where we spent most of our points, we want to start out with the class feat. And this is an action skill start. The Fate Maker becomes enraged, and while enraged we deal bonus frost damage for a duration. So this is going to be very useful since we're using only frost in this build. So for the skill tree, we want to max out Ancestral Frost, and this will give us 20% increased frost damage, but we're getting +2 from the class mod we are using, so we're getting 28% increased frost damage here instead. We want to max out Icebreaker, and this is to get increased damage dealt to enemies that are slowed, and even more damage dealt to enemies that are frozen. We also want to max out Cold Snap, and this is to increase the frost efficiency, and when we are enraged the effect is doubled, so the frost efficiency is 24% and gonna be doubled during the action skill, which we're gonna be in very often. Since we do more damage against slowed and frozen enemies with Icebreaker, we benefit a lot from having Cold Snap since we increase the frost efficiency and will be able to freeze them and slow them way faster. We also want to max out the Old Ways, and this is a good offensive and defensive tool since we're getting bonus damage and damage reduction the closer we are to the enemy. So we're gonna have 30% increased damage when we are very close, and we're gonna have 40% increased damage reduction when we are very close. And then I maxed out Instinct, but this is a personal preference because of the weapon of choice that we will come into very soon. But this gains increased reload speed, and while enraged, the effect is doubled. I also put 1 point into Blood Frenzy, and this is another personal preference since I had 1 spare point actually. But this is a kill skill, so a portion of the Fate Maker's active enrage timer and a percentage of his health are restored. We want to max out Ancient Fury, and this is mainly because of the 25% increase to area damage, but it's also a nice increase to our maximum health by 20%. We also want to max out Iron Squall, and this is to increase our fire rate, which is always going to be useful. And this is 15%, but when we are enraged, the effect is doubled. And then we have the last skill point for the build, and this is the capstone of the BrrZerker skill tree, Blood of the Fallen. And this is a kill skill. So the Fate Maker's remaining action skill cooldown is reduced by a percentage, and if his action skill is currently active, restore a percentage of its duration instead, and this is 20% respectively. So this is going to make us be in the shadow action skill for a long time, and when it's not going to be active, we're going to reduce the cooldown a lot by killing. Now let's have a look at the gear. So the main weapon for this build is going to be a Sword Explosion. And this is a personal preference. You can get a lot of good weapons to work with this build as well, but I really like the Sword Explosion, and it's a really good weapon in general, so that's why I picked this one. And this is not a ×3 because I have not been able to get one, and the ×3 tends to shred through the ammo way faster than a regular one, so this is a personal preference, but if you prefer a ×3, then you will do even more damage than I do. When you're using the Sword Explosion, you want to use it in sticky mode all the time. And the enchantment we use here is on action skill start, increase damage dealt by 20% for 20 seconds. I'm also carrying around a delusion, and it's only because of the soaked effect, and I will get into why I carry a delusion very soon when we get into the spells. This is not even enchanted because it's only to apply the soaked effect, nothing else. For the melee weapon I went with a 𝕃𝕚𝕚𝕚𝕓𝕤𝕖, and this is so melee attacks increases our movement speed by 30% and the reload speed by 40% for 10 seconds. And it's mainly the reload speed I'm after for this one. We also want to have echo on the melee weapon, and this makes our melee attacks deal 10% of all the non-melee damage dealt by the Fate Maker over the last 10 seconds as bonus damage. This basically means that if your sword explosion or weapon of choice is not being able to finish the enemy off, you can easily just hit it one time with this one and it's going to be enough to kill the enemy. And the enchantment we have here is while action skill is active, increase frost damage by 50%. For the armor I went with this specific one, and it's only because of the god rolls that we have here. So we have 25% increased all damage dealt, we have 25% increased area damage, and we also have 41.7 increased gun damage, and we're getting +2 into Ancestral Frost. If you can get an armor with somewhat of these rolls, you can use whatever you want to. I only use this because of the rolls. And for the shield I went with my favorite, and if you guys have watched my other videos you know that I like the shield. It gives us elemental damage resistance by 20%, which is so useful in Chaos Chambers. And we mainly use this because of the 10% increase into frost damage. The enchantment we use here is while action skill is active, increase elemental damage by 35%. And for the rings we are using Shark's Bane, and this is because it gives us such a high boost into gun damage. It's 39.4% on this volatile one, and we also have action skill duration by 14%. And the Shark's Bane rings are unique because on critical hits, the ring's effectiveness is increased by 33% for a short duration. Since we're gonna crit a lot with this build, we're gonna have this up all the time. For the second ring we are using another Shark's Bane. This is a chaotic one, so we have 34.3% gun damage. We have 14.8% shotgun critical hit damage on this one, and that's very beneficial since we are using a sword explosion as the main weapon. So for the necklace we have another case of god rolls, so we only use this because of the rolls. We have 40.6% increase to frost damage, we have 33.9% increase to Stabbomancer power, we have 13.1% increase to all damage dealt, and we have 34.7% status effect damage. This necklace has while health is full, healing from dark magic increases maximum health, and this is not going to benefit us at all since we're not using any dark magic. So for the spells we are using a Tidebreaker. This is to apply the soaked effect, and the enchantment we have here is on spell cast, increase gun damage by 30% for 10 seconds. This spell is only used during mobbing to be able to apply the soaked effect. During actual bossing, we want to use a fortifying sigil. So when we don't have the Tidebreaker equipped, that's when the delusion comes into place, so we can apply the soaked status effect. The sigil, it's a self-cast, and you increase all damage while inside it by 20%, and you also heal for 8% of your health every second. And the enchantment we use on the sigil is on action skill start, increase gun damage by 40% for 10 seconds. For the hero points we want to max out strength to increase the critical hit damage. We want to max out wisdom, and this is to increase the status effect damage. Rest of the points is personal preference, but I put them into intelligence to reduce the spell cooldown a little bit. Now let's take a look at some boss melting.